The crime at the center of today's story is considered to be one of the most disturbing of all time. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of true crime stories, then you come to the right place. We roll out fresh stories 2 times every week, so don't forget to show some love by hitting that like button and of course subscribing to our channel. Oh, and make sure to ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our weekly uploads. Austin Harrouff was born on December 21, 1996, to a dentist and a pharmacist. They lived in a beautiful home in Palm Beach County, Florida. This county stands out not only as one of the nicest and wealthiest places to reside in Florida, but also as one of the most luxurious and prosperous areas in all of America. As of 2021, there are 44 billionaires who have chosen to make this paradise their home. In 2010, when Austin was 13 years old, his parents underwent an unexpected divorce. Remarkably, within the same calendar year, both of his parents found new romantic partners. Naturally, this sudden shift was a shock to Austin and his younger sister Haley, who was just 1 year his junior. However, they adapted relatively swiftly to their new reality. A significant factor in their adaptation was that the children did not relocate. They remained in the family home with their mother. Their father, on the other hand, did move out, but he found a residence very close by. Around a year after the divorce, Austin began high school and immediately, he excelled in school. Placed into all advanced classes, Austin consistently ranked at the top of his class within these rigorous academic settings. Not only was Austin academically adept, but he also possessed an imposing athletic stature. Standing at approximately 6 feet tall and weighing around 200 pounds, he naturally gravitated towards football throughout his entire 4-year high school journey. Additionally, during his sophomore year, he tried his hand at wrestling. Despite his imposing physicality and his participation in these demanding contact sports, Austin was not naturally inclined towards aggression. Curiously, his football coaches would often criticize him for his lack of aggressiveness. On game days, they attempted to stoke his competitive fire by provoking his anger, hoping that this would inspire him to unleash his full physical potential on the field. However, this approach largely fell short, as Austin remained true to his character, a laid-back individual who found greater satisfaction in assisting others than in physically overpowering them. As high school drew to a close, Austin's focus shifted towards identifying a career path that would enable him to make the most impactful difference in people's lives. His passion for this pursuit was so evident that whenever he spoke about it, an involuntary smile would grace his face. Austin's perpetually cheerful demeanor and his genuine desire to contribute to the welfare of others prompted his father to affectionately nickname him the Happy Boy. Shortly before Austin's graduation in 2015, a significant moment unfolded as he received a letter from Florida State University in the mail. This letter held the news that he had been accepted into their esteemed 4-year pre-med program. Austin had decisively chosen medicine as his intended career path, seeing it as the avenue through which he could make the most profound impact on people's lives. Being granted admission into this prestigious program was akin to a dream come true. Consequently, Austin and his family were filled with elation. The subsequent summer that followed his high school graduation was a period of sheer enchantment. Austin existed in a state of bliss, spending ample time with his family and friends. As the summer unfurled, a defining moment arrived. His family gathered to pack up his belongings, embarking on a 6-hour journey north to Tallahassee, the location of the Florida State campus. Amid this journey, they shared moments of joy as they helped Austin settle into his dorm. Eventually, they bid him a fond farewell, embracing him tightly and expressing their well wishes. During their return trip, there's a high likelihood that thoughts coursed through their minds, reflections on Austin's impressive progress, and a quiet affirmation that he was not only prepared for college life, but also poised to embrace adulthood fully. As Austin embarked on his first year of college, the supposition that he was ready to shoulder adult responsibilities appeared to hold true. His academic performance was exceptional, with him achieving excellent grades. He also formed a meaningful connection with a kind-hearted girlfriend. Despite not participating in organized sports like football, Austin found an alternate outlet for his athleticism through bodybuilding. Impressively, he cultivated a notable presence on social media, garnering a substantial following. Austin had a strong presence in the world of bodybuilding and fitness, but beneath this public success, he struggled deeply. Most of the time, he didn't share this with anyone. In a journal he kept, he wrote about feeling inadequate. He believed his peers didn't accept him. He wrote a lot about how if he could be less shy and more outgoing, more people would like him and accept him. During that year, Austin began using substances. This included alcohol, marijuana, and Vivanza, which is a drug used for attention issues. He also tried hallucinogenic drugs like acid, mushrooms, and even MDMA, a mix of stimulant and hallucinogen. He might have used other drugs too. Austin went between feeling high on these drugs and feeling low when sober, filled with anxious and sad thoughts. By the end of the school year, Austin was on the edge of a mental breakdown. He seemed to know it was about to happen. In the last month before school ended, his internet search history was filled with questions like, "I think I'm crazy. What do I do? How do you know if you're crazy? How to deal with obsessive thoughts? Do I need to sleep? And what happens if you don't sleep?" It was clear he was starting to doubt his own sanity. When Austin returned home from Florida State that summer, his family noticed something was amiss right away. Within a few days of being back, Austin moved his bed from his bedroom to the garage. He said he did this because he believed the house was filled with demons at night. Instead of sleeping, Austin would patrol the house. He walked around the house all night without stopping. Every 2 hours he'd knock loudly on his family members' bedroom doors and announce that he was protecting them from the demons in the house. You can imagine how strange and out of character this was for his family. They were unsure of what to do. Even though they could tell something was wrong, they didn't take immediate action. Their initial response was to start locking their bedroom doors at night to prevent Austin from entering during his nighttime patrols. As the summer went on and Austin's strange behavior persisted without any explanation, his family gradually became convinced that he must be using drugs. They believed that drug use could be the reason behind his peculiar actions. When they confronted him about his drug use, he admitted to taking various drugs, including psychedelics and stimulants. This confirmation of drug use led his family to focus their efforts on helping him get clean. However, towards the end of the summer, Austin claimed he had stopped taking drugs. Despite this, his behavior remained erratic and unbalanced. By mid-August, the family decided to invoke the Baker Act. This legal provision in Florida allows individuals suspected of severe mental illness to be detained for up to 72 hours at the request of their loved ones. During this period, a thorough assessment is conducted to understand their condition. At the end of the 72 hours, a treatment plan is developed for the individual, which their family is expected to assist in implementing. Yet, before the family could put the Baker Act into action, a horrifying incident occurred on the morning of August 15th. One of Austin's close friends, whom he had known for a long time, noticed something unusual. Austin appeared at his house without prior notice, which was out of character for him. When this friend opened the door, Austin asked him a question without any context. "What year was I born?" The friend responded with 1996. Austin didn't react and simply turned around, leaving abruptly. His friend was puzzled and wondered what might be going on. Was Austin intoxicated, on drugs, or just acting strangely? Back inside his house, the friend contemplated the situation. After a few minutes, he decided to call Austin to ensure he was all right. Austin answered the call, but the details of their conversation are unclear. Nevertheless, the friend convinced Austin to return to his house and spend the day together. In truth, the friend wanted to check on Austin's well-being. Austin came back to his friend's house and eventually they left to meet up with other friends who were also in town for the summer. They also met Austin's sister. The group made plans to spend the day at the beach. On their way to the beach, Austin informed the group that he needed to retrieve something from his house and assured them he would meet them by the water later. This led the group to believe that Austin was perfectly fine. They agreed and continued towards the beach, assuming all was well. However, when Austin rejoined the group after his visit home, his appearance had undergone a change. He was now wearing a thick, oversized football jersey, long sweatpants, also thick, 2 wristwatches and sunglasses. Given the scorching weather and the beach setting, his outfit choice was undeniably unusual. His friends, puzzled by his attire, playfully teased him about it. Austin's reaction, though, was far from humorous. He initially stayed quiet, but his demeanor soon shifted, and he sternly warned them that if they called him crazy, he would harm them. Taken aback by his response, his friends immediately ceased their teasing and assured him they meant no harm. They attempted to defuse the situation by assuring him it was all in good fun. Austin's agitation remained palpable, prompting his sister to approach him in an effort to calm him down. She offered reassurances, telling him not to worry. During this conversation, something unexpected occurred. Austin's behavior shifted back to normal. He turned to his sister and, seemingly out of the blue, told her, "I'm actually half horse." Austin's statement took an even more perplexing turn as he continued, asserting that he was immortal and half horse. His sister reacted with disbelief, urging him to seek professional help immediately. She implored him to consult a therapist or psychologist, highlighting that something had been amiss throughout the summer. Austin's response to her plea was unexpectedly positive. He agreed, acknowledging that indeed something was wrong and that he needed assistance. After this conversation, Austin and the group spent several hours at the beach. Later in the evening, Austin, his sister, and his close friend, the one who had encountered Austin in the morning with the odd question about his birth year, decided to leave. They headed to Duffy's, a local restaurant, to meet up with Austin's father and his father's girlfriend. As they strolled along the sidewalk towards the restaurant, something alarming unfolded. Austin turned to his sister and casually mentioned, "Hey, I need to test out my immortality." Without hesitation, he turned away from the sidewalk and headed toward traffic, walking as if he intended to be hit by a car to confirm his belief in his own immortality. Reacting swiftly, his sister managed to grasp Austin and pull him back onto the sidewalk. She positioned herself to his left, preventing him from moving towards traffic. She guided him along the sidewalk, ensuring his safety until they reached the entrance of the restaurant. Upon their arrival, Austin's attempt to walk into traffic ceased, and his behavior reverted to seeming normal. Inside the restaurant, the trio joined Austin's father and his father's girlfriend. As they entered Duffy's around 7:45 p.m., they were promptly seated in a booth toward the back. The restaurant had a CCTV camera observing its interior. Roughly 3 minutes after taking their seats, Austin abruptly rose and walked away from the booth. Initially, he appeared to head toward the restroom, but he halted before reaching it. Instead, he reversed direction, walked back to the front of the establishment, and exited the restaurant. It remains uncertain whether his family members noticed this departure. However, within a minute, Austin returned to the restaurant, rejoining the group at the table as if nothing had transpired. Astonishingly, in less than 10 minutes, Austin once again stood up from the table. However, this time he took a different approach. Instead of pretending to visit the bathroom, he directly exited the restaurant through the front doors and vanished. Minutes later, Austin's mother, who was not present at the dinner, heard someone entering her house nearby. Investigating the noise, she found Austin in her kitchen, consuming vegetable oil and spilling Parmesan cheese all over the counter. Alarmed, she took the vegetable oil from him and urged him to stop. He complied, and then seemingly without further ado, he went upstairs to change his clothes, perhaps due to the mess he'd made on his shirt. His mother then drove him back to the restaurant. She watched as he entered through the front doors and headed inside, and then she left. Around 30 minutes after his second departure, Austin re-entered the restaurant. He wore different clothes and a different hat. With an air of nonchalance, he walked to the back of the restaurant where his sister, his friend, his father and his father's girlfriend were seated. Austin took a seat as if nothing unusual had occurred. Initially, the scene at the table appeared silent, but Austin's father eventually broke the silence, addressing Austin in a somewhat confrontational manner. Austin's father, who cared deeply for his son, was visibly perplexed and frustrated. He asked Austin, "What is wrong with you?" In response, Austin abruptly stood up and pressed his father's face against the backrest of the seat, momentarily pinning him there. Then, just as abruptly, he released his grip, left the booth, and exited the restaurant for the third time. Austin's friend, who was dining with them, reacted swiftly and pursued Austin outside. However, he arrived outside about 30 seconds after Austin had left and couldn't ascertain his whereabouts. He quickly returned to the restaurant and informed the others that he couldn't find Austin. In response, Austin's father's girlfriend dialed the police to report Austin as missing. Given Austin's unstable behavior and the uncertainty of his intentions, they were concerned for his safety and that of others. Approximately 4 miles away from the restaurant, 53-year-old Michelle Mishkan sat in her garage watching television. Typically, her husband, 59-year-old John Stevens, would join her in this routine. However, at that moment, John was out walking their dog. Consequently, Michelle was alone in their garage, a place that held immense significance for the couple. Their garage, often with its door wide open, served as their cherished gathering spot. They loved interacting with neighbors, inviting people in for drinks or casual conversations. Their warmth and joyousness made them a beloved presence in the community. Married for about 2 decades, they each brought 3 children from previous marriages into their family. Their love was evident to all, and their garage symbolized their shared happiness. Retirement had recently greeted them both. John retired from his landscaping business, while Michelle bid farewell to her financial advisory role. The prospect of retirement life filled them with anticipation. They looked forward to quality time together, outings with friends, fishing excursions on their boat accompanied by their dog, and relaxation in the comfort of their garage. A neighbor named Jeff Fisher, residing across the street, had a close rapport with the couple. He often watched over their dogs when they were away and frequently joined them in their garage for drinks and casual camaraderie. That evening, Jeff was preparing to retire to bed early in his own home. However, before he could rest, peculiar sounds emanated from outside his window. The noises seemed to be coming from John and Michelle's property across the street. With a chilling turn of events, Austin was now atop Michelle, violently assaulting her. Jeff rushed up the driveway, darting between the parked vehicles. Austin abruptly ceased his attack on Michelle, leaped off her, and confronted Jeff. In a chilling tone, Austin warned, "You don't want a part of this." Undeterred, Jeff, a substantial individual, recognized that inaction would lead to further harm to Michelle. He knew he needed to intervene, even though he was unsure of John's whereabouts. Jeff lunged at Austin, prompting Austin to swing a blow at Jeff's head. Despite the impact, Jeff stood his ground, seized Austin by the collar, and forcefully hurled him to the ground. Austin crashed onto the pavement face first, seemingly incapacitated. Observing this, Jeff assumed Austin wouldn't rise again, yet his assessment proved incorrect. To Jeff's shock, Austin regained his footing and suddenly attacked Jeff with a ferocious onslaught of strikes, targeting his face, head, neck, and back. Jeff's world blurred into blinding pain. Blood coated his arms, splattering everywhere. It was at this dreadful moment that Jeff realized Austin had a knife, a horrifying revelation that cast a chilling new dimension onto the escalating encounter. Once the call was made and help was en route, Jeff's consciousness waned. Amidst his fading awareness, he desperately hoped that Austin had ceased his assault or that John had intervened to aid his wife. The only sounds he could discern were Austin's bestial grunts across the street and piercing screams that echoed in his ears. These desperate noises held no gender or count to Jeff, only the disturbing symphony of fear and pain. Moments later, police sirens wailed, and the second officer to arrive, referred to as Dan, shared his account. Dan sped down the street, sirens blazing, and parked his vehicle behind Kristen's patrol car, which was stationed in front of John and Michelle's property. Kristen, the first officer to respond, was already advancing up the driveway with her firearm drawn, prepared to confront the unknown threat. Exiting his car, Dan grasped his weapon, ready to engage if necessary. As he turned to ascend the driveway, his line of sight was obstructed by 2 parked cars, complicating his view. Unable to see what had captured Kristen's attention at the top, he navigated around the left side of one of the parked cars and finally reached Kristen, who had her firearm aimed downward just in front of the car. Although he couldn't see the immediate situation, Dan saw a gruesome sight, a wide, flowing stream of blood staining the driveway. Arriving behind Kristen, Dan finally beheld the scene. He saw her gun pointed downward, aimed at a man on the ground. This man was lying stiffly, his eyes open, gazing up at both officers. In a hushed tone, he implored, "Please help me." This man was John Stevens. Austin was atop him, lying sideways on John's chest. Austin's left arm encircled John's neck, effectively restraining him. Meanwhile, his right arm was engaged in some activity on John's face, though the specifics were unclear to Dan. The situation was dire, and the officers needed to intervene, but Kristen hesitated to take a shot. Firing could risk hitting Austin and the bullet subsequently passing through him to strike John, causing further harm. Seeing the urgency of the situation, Dan informs Kristen of his plan to use a taser. He positions himself on Kristen's left side, aiming at Austin's back. But before Dan deploys the taser, he witnesses the disturbing act that Austin is inflicting on John's face. Austin's right hand was inside John's mouth, forcefully pulling at his cheek as if using a fishhook. He was tearing out chunks of flesh, biting into them and consuming them. The sight was horrifying, and Dan quickly realized that significant portions of John's face were already missing. With a swift decision, Dan fires the taser into Austin's back, hoping to incapacitate him. However, the taser's shock has no effect on Austin whatsoever. He remains entirely focused on his gruesome activity, seemingly unaware of the officers with their guns drawn. Reacting to the failed taser attempt, Dan moves around Kristen to her other side, positioning himself on her right. He stands by the car, looking down at Austin. Instructing Kristen to step back momentarily, Dan prepares to act. With a powerful kick, he strikes Austin directly in the face, forcefully separating his head from John's mutilated cheek. The impact of the kick manages to dislodge Austin from his victim and momentarily disrupt his terrifying assault. Despite the repeated kicks to his face by Dan and the efforts of the officers, Austin remains unresponsive to their attempts to subdue him. He is completely fixated on his horrifying act of consuming John's face. Each time he is dislodged, Austin immediately resumes his gruesome assault without showing any signs of pain or aggression toward the officers. As additional officers arrive on the scene, they bring a police dog with them. Recognizing the severity of the situation, Dan instructs them to release the dog. The police canine is directed at Austin, and it clamps down on his right arm, the very arm that Austin had been using to pull at John's face. The dog's bite is strong and forceful, causing considerable damage to Austin's arm and attempting to pull him away from John. However, Austin's determination is chillingly evident. Ignoring the pain and damage inflicted by the police dog, he manages to wrest his arm free from the dog's grip and returns to his horrifying act of biting and consuming John's face. The officers and the police dog's efforts to restrain him appear futile in the face of Austin's single-minded obsession to continue his gruesome attack. The intense struggle between Austin and the officers finally reaches a crucial turning point. As Austin is momentarily stunned from the forceful blow to his head by Dan, and with Dan leaping over John to restrain him, a brief window of opportunity emerges. Dan swiftly employs his handcuffs, securing one cuff onto Austin's wrist. However, Austin's resistance and screams continue, prompting the need for additional officers to join the effort. With the combined strength of several officers, they manage to subdue Austin enough to place the second handcuff on him, finally bringing him under control. The officers' actions mark the end of Austin's horrifying attack on John and Michelle. As the officers shift their focus, they discover the tragic fate of Michelle. Despite their valiant efforts, she had succumbed to the severe injuries inflicted upon her by Austin's brutal assault. The incident leaves everyone involved deeply shaken by the incomprehensible violence that unfolded that night. The harrowing ordeal showcases the stark reality of confronting extreme and unpredictable situations that law enforcement officers sometimes face, as they strive to protect and serve their communities while putting their own lives on the line. John, even though he had been alive when the police first arrived, had succumbed to a multitude of injuries, including stabbings, beatings, and having a portion of his face ripped off. It's believed that after John returned from his walk, which was shortly after Jeff had been attacked and ran back to his house, he saw Austin in his garage attacking his wife. John rushed in to try to save her. Ultimately, John would die while attempting to save the woman he loved. Their dog survived the attack and was unharmed. It was given to one of their children to take care of. Jeff Fisher, the neighbor who tried to save John and Michelle, survived the attack and made a full recovery. After Austin was finally handcuffed and was lying restrained on the driveway, he suddenly became unresponsive. He was rushed to the hospital where it was determined he had consumed some poisonous chemicals, likely from inside John and Michelle's garage. These chemicals were causing his organs to fail. Austin went into a coma for 11 days due to the ingestion, but doctors were able to save his life. He eventually emerged from the coma and made a full physical recovery. It was initially assumed that due to Austin's history of drug abuse, he must have been on some kind of drug when he committed this horrific crime. There was speculation that he could have been under the influence of bath salts or flakka, which are synthetic hallucinogenic drugs known for inducing violent behavior. These drugs were quite prevalent in Florida at the time and had been associated with other cases of violent rampages. However, when Austin's toxicology report was finally released, it showed that he had only a small amount of THC in his system, the compound found in marijuana. The other drugs found in his system were administered by the hospital staff, indicating that he was effectively sober at the time of the attack. When the police questioned Austin about why he did this, he initially claimed not to remember or know, but eventually he opened up and shared a story that was incomprehensible to any rational person. He said that after he left the restaurant where his family was during that third encounter, after his altercation with his father and storming out, he saw a dark figure outside with a white face. Immediately, he felt that this figure was malevolent and evil. Instinctively, Austin began running away from this perceived evil figure. He ran about 4 miles into a neighborhood that he wasn't familiar with, not intentionally seeking it out, but ending up there. In this unfamiliar neighborhood, he saw a brightly lit garage and rushed into it, believing that the people inside could assist him in confronting the evil figure he believed was nearby. Unbeknownst to him, the garage he entered was John and Michelle's. Michelle was inside while John was out walking their dog. Austin approached Michelle, likely appearing erratic and disturbed, and tried to enlist her help in fighting the perceived evil presence. However, his demeanor likely came across as completely irrational, leading Michelle to scream. In response, Austin believed that Michelle was a witch, and he attacked her with a knife. After Michelle fell to the ground, Austin said he consumed a bottle of what he believed was alcohol, which was likely toxic lawn chemicals present in the garage. He then turned his attention to the garage's entrance, where he claimed to see another figure accompanied by a dog. It's believed that this figure was actually John Stevens. After this point, Austin's memory went blank, and his actions became increasingly violent and inexplicable. It's believed the figure he saw in the doorway was potentially John Stevens returning from his walk, although this narrative is unclear and doesn't fully align with the events that transpired before John's return. It doesn't account for Austin's earlier interaction with Jeff Fisher, the neighbor he had attacked and stabbed before encountering John. However, Austin claimed to have no memory of the altercation with Jeff Fisher, meeting John, or biting John's face. He also had no recollection of his interactions with the police. According to Austin, after seeing the figure and the dog, his memory went blank until he woke up in the hospital about 2 weeks later. Despite skepticism from the public suggesting that Austin might be fabricating this story to plea insanity and receive a more lenient sentence during his trial, a renowned forensic psychologist named Philip Resnick conducted a thorough evaluation of Austin's mental state. In his comprehensive 38-page report, Resnick pointed out that Austin continued his violent and gruesome attack on John's face despite various threats and interventions. He kept biting even when faced with the risk of being shot by a police officer, even after being tased, kicked in the head, and bitten by a police dog. This consistent behavior indicates that Austin was genuinely experiencing a psychotic episode during the attack. A sane individual, even under the influence of drugs, tends to have a basic survival instinct. They usually try to protect themselves when faced with threats, physical harm, or the presence of a weapon like a gun. However, Austin's actions during the attack defied this instinct. He seemed entirely fixated on John's face, almost as if he were oblivious to anything else. Resnick emphasized that Austin's behavior pointed to a specific type of psychotic episode known as clinical lycanthropy delusions. Clinical lycanthropy is an extremely rare phenomenon where an individual firmly believes that they are no longer human and instead identify as something resembling a werewolf. Austin's case aligns with this pattern, considering his statements to his sister about being part horse or dog. On the night of the attack, his behavior of attacking Michelle and subsequently pouncing on John while emitting animalistic grunts strongly resembled the actions of a werewolf in fiction. However, it's crucial to remember that this wasn't a movie, it was a real-life tragedy with devastating consequences. The explanation for Austin's actions lies in the realm of severe mental disturbance, not in supernatural elements. Clinical lycanthropy delusions shed light on his bizarre and horrifying behavior, which defied the basic human survival instincts that one would typically expect in such situations. After Austin emerged from his coma, and before he was transferred to jail, he agreed to an interview with clinical psychologist and TV personality Phil McGraw, commonly known as Dr. Phil. In their 10-minute Zoom interview, Austin broke down in tears, expressing deep remorse to the victims' families. He admitted that he didn't fully understand why the attack happened and acknowledged that there was something seriously wrong with him. He pleaded for understanding and hoped for eventual forgiveness, though the path to forgiveness seems unlikely, given the heinous nature of the crimes. The victims' families, on the other hand, are struggling to find it within themselves to forgive Austin, especially considering the severity of the tragedy. In an interview, they expressed their desire for Austin to fully recover from his coma without any brain damage, so that he can be mentally aware and comprehend the gravity of his actions when his sentence is read. They have openly stated that they are hoping for a death penalty verdict. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey through the depths of human malevolence. If you found today's account informative, we invite you to subscribe to our channel and enable notifications, ensuring you never miss our weekly uploads. Your support is invaluable as we shed light on stories that need to be told. Until next time.